During the Civil Rights Movement, just over 50 years ago, civil rights were perceived as special treatment for African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. responded to this by saying, "Our society has been doing something special against the Negro for hundreds of years. How then can he be absorbed into the mainstream of American life if we do not do something special for him now in order to balance the equation and equip him to compete on a just and equal basis?" Special treatment for whites has been occurring since the history of the United States, in which they were allowed to advance at the expense of African Americans. That's where affirmative action comes in. It may not be the solution to every problem, but it's a start. Affirmative action is tricky to institute policy on because it's kind of hard to define. I remember in 2006 when Proposal 2 passed in Michigan, the banning of affirmative action throughout the state. And I wrote a letter to my congressperson at that time just about the wording of the proposal. I found it incredibly confusing and thought that there could be a better way to use that, or to word it. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to refer to a definition by Elizabeth Anderson from her work, The Importance of Integration. So affirmative action, for our purposes, is any policy that aims to increase the participation of a disadvantaged social group in mainstream institutions, using group membership as criteria for selecting participants. Let's take a look at what's happened to diversity since the passing of Proposal 2. In 2006, the African American population at the University of Michigan was 6.4%. In 2012, that decreased to 4.6%. We can contrast that with the Michigan population. According to a 2013 census estimate, the African American population was 14.3%. So even in 2006, before affirmative action was banned, we still hadn't quite reached a population at universities that adequately reflected the population of our state. And even in spite of this, universities are taking race-neutral approaches to preserve diversity. The University of Michigan is involved in excessive outreach to low-income communities, soliciting applications. And they also enlist minority students for this outreach so that minorities can see themselves reflected in the university's population. But it's not enough, especially considering the racial biases that have historically plagued African Americans. Ta-Nehisi Coates puts it quite simply in his case for reparations. It's been 250 years of slavery, followed by Jim Crow, followed by separate but equal, and even as late as the 1960s, racist housing policies that preyed on black congregations and churches to give them subprime loans. And there's present bias that exists even today. The unemployment rates are astonishing. Black college graduates still suffer higher unemployment rates than white college graduates, and a white job applicant with a criminal record is still more likely to get that job than a black applicant without a criminal record. So these biases still exist today. With regard to the prison system, African Americans and whites have similar rates of illicit drug use and dealing, but African Americans are 68% of the population in state prisons, even though, as we just saw, they're 14.3% of the population in Michigan. And perhaps most sadly, African American males have a 1 in 3 lifetime chance of spending at least 1 year in prison. University opportunities are gateways to networking. They give African Americans opportunities to fraternize with people that they wouldn't normally meet. And so in addition to getting a great education that will increase their upward mobility, they also have the ability to meet people who will grant them further opportunities later on. Some argue that a class-based affirmative action might actually be more useful, focusing on lower socioeconomic groups, but white poverty is not equivalent to black poverty. As stated previously, whites have received years of special treatment and at the expense of African Americans. So to do away with white poverty is not the same as doing away with racial injustice. Furthermore, There are existing affirmative action programs that don't relate to race. They relate to other groups. One of these has to do with athletes. An athlete with academic prowess, but a lower ability to perform academically, is going to be more likely to be accepted to a university, and that's a type of affirmative action. Another form of affirmative action that isn't normally referred to as affirmative action is the preference given to legacies. So if your parents or brothers or sisters or other relatives attended a university, you will be more likely to be accepted to that university, which is another affirmative action policy. There are costs associated with race-based affirmative action as well, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. There's the issue of resentment. A black student at Harvard might wonder if he really earned his place at Harvard or if it was the result of affirmative action, and other students might wonder the same thing. There's increased pressure to perform because of this resentment, too, and that makes things harder for African American students. It might also contribute to excessive attention to race. If we spend all our time focusing on race-based affirmative action, then we're going to become obsessed with race. Well, newsflash, the United States of America already pays excessive attention to race, and that's why affirmative action is necessary, because of the existence of excessive attention to race. So, instating race-based affirmative action won't change a thing with regard to that. Just imagine. The message black kids get, according to Billy Brooks, is that they're not any good. The only thing you're worth is working for us. You will never own anything. You're not going to get an education. We are sending your ass to the penitentiary. According to Billy Brooks, they're telling you, no matter how hard you struggle, no matter what you do, you are worthless. That message has improved for African Americans over the years. We do have an African American president, Barack Obama, and young African Americans can see themselves reflected in politicians and doctors and lawyers, but not at the same rate as white Americans. Imagine a world where a young African American girl can turn on the TV and see herself reflected in the doctors and lawyers and politicians all around her. Imagine a world where the university environment adequately reflects the population, where Tyrell Collier, the president of the Black Student Union at University of Michigan, isn't increasingly disheartened by the lack of black faces he sees on campus, the lack of people he sees reflecting himself. Imagine a United States that recognizes the systematic and historical oppression of African Americans by offering them the opportunity to a great education. A recent Supreme Court decision confirmed the constitutionality of Proposal 2 on the basis that voters decided to ban affirmative action. According to the Supreme Court, their duty was to uphold what the voters decided, no matter their position on affirmative action. So that's where we, the voters, come in. Write a letter to your state representatives and let them know you believe affirmative action can be of great benefit to African Americans. Suggest that we repeal Proposal 2, or that a new, revised affirmative action plan makes it on the ballot for the next election. African Americans have endured incredible hardship during the entire history of the United States of America still suffer the aftermath today, and affirmative action through higher education can give them the chance to rise out of extraordinary situations. Let the population of universities accurately reflect the population of our state. Support affirmative action.